to share something with you. That might put me in a very negative light, yeah.
Relationships are not my forte.
See if someone grabbed up my wife or something completely different ballgame.
I'll walk away from here, and this has been like a therapy session.
This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. We're at the media workout here for Taylor versus Carabajal.
Or Carabajal.
Carabajal.
Or Carabajal. Silent J.
The noise in the background is the Romford ball, Johnny Fisher obliterating the pads.
From the first jab, everyone just went, what was that? Johnny Fisher and the Romford Army in force on Saturday night at Wembley. Bosh.
Let's talk about the card first of all. Obviously, some interesting fights in there. Jordan Gill and Kiko Martinez. What has Kiko Martinez still got left in the tank?
Well, I mean, bearing in mind he just had a fantastic fight with Josh Warrington. He broke Josh Warrington's jaw. Josh Warrington had to wear him down and stop him in a great performance, but a lot, especially at world level. I mean, one thing you know about Kiko Martinez is he's never...
You want a Friday night?
Oh, no. He's a lump, Johnny Fisher. One thing you know about Kiko Martinez is he's not coming for a final payday. He's coming to win this fight and actually become, I believe, a 6-time European champion, but also put himself back in a position on the world scene as well. This fight could well be a tale of the first and second half of the fight. I expect Jordan Gill to pepper him in this fight, but he's going to have to stand up to Kiko Martinez, walking him down, throwing that big right hand, being rough and tough on the inside. Jordan's going to have to be very disciplined, but I'm so pleased that Jordan gets his shot in a big fight, but also the one that could take him to the World Championship. This is an eliminator for the IBF title, but also a fight that's going to take him into, financially a great position as well, because he's given a lot to the sport, and his victory against Gurphy last time out was unbelievable. So really looking forward to this fight. Ellie Scotney's in a great fight against Mary Romero, the European champion. Of course, Johnny Fisher on the card. Gary Cully's got a really tough fight in against an unbeaten Frenchman. Thomas Whittaker-Hart's in a really good domestic fight as well. Jordan Reynolds, Maisie Rose Courtney making a professional debut as well. John Hedges on the card. And of course, the legend, Katie Taylor, in a mandatory defence against Karahabar. And, I think 19-0. Tough fight, which we expect her to come through and hopefully set up the Amanda Serrano fight. I hope they can hear that.
How much? They definitely will be able to hear it. How much?
What?
Take a few of them. You take a few of them?
No. It would actually... You wouldn't survive that.
You wouldn't, no.
Oh, well, you would. With your neck.
Okay. There's the NFL going on at... Is it the NFL on Sunday at Wembley?
Where are you going with this?
No, because all the hotels were booked. Everyone was going to me, they can't get near Wembley for the hotels.
Bradford, I think. Yeah. It's been a nightmare. When we booked the venue, of course, the hotels were all fully booked around the area. I believe NFL at Spurs, and so it's a little bit of a trek. Sorry about that. Are you in the hotel?
Yeah, but I wasn't saying that.
Why are you in the hotel when you live in Essex?
I don't live in Essex. I've moved, see? You don't even talk to me anymore. You don't even know where I live.
We don't talk.
I don't even live in this country, to be honest.
Oh, sorry, mate.
Edward, let's talk about Anthony Joshua. You have made some comments. Obviously, we have learned in the last couple of weeks that he's not going to be fighting this year. You've also made some comments regarding him potentially going straight into a fight with Dillian Whyte for the first quarter of 2023. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I just feel that obviously AJ mentally had accepted the Tyson Fury fight. When that fell through, we start going back to the original plan of having 2 steady top 15 guys. And I just think that in AJ's head, he's like, every camp's hard, every fight's hard. I'm not sure I just want a easy fight. Like, what about Dillian Whyte? And this was just discussed the other day. And I said, listen, I'd love to make that fight. Of course, Dillian Whyte would love the fight with Anthony Joshua. It's a great fight for British boxing. It's a great fight for the heavyweight division. And Jesus Christ. And therefore, if Dillian Whyte could come through Jermaine Franklin, which is a very tough fight on November 26th, why not move straight into a fight with AJ? Now, there is a chance AJ could have one first, then we do that fight in the summer. But I would expect to see AJ against Dillian Whyte if he was triumphant on November 26th.
Let's kind of keep on the theme of Dillian Whyte. Obviously, his next fight has been announced for the OVO Arena at Wembley, 26th of November, again, the unbeaten Jermaine Franklin. Can you talk to me about Franklin for people that don't know, and also who else is considered for the 26th for Dillian?
So Franklin, 21-0, undefeated American fighter, well known within the boxing community in America as someone with power and good feet and fast hands as well. Been looking for a big opportunity for a long time with Dimitri Salita and those boys over there, chomping at the bit. We actually, when Dillian agreed to fight Otto Wallin, Franklin was pretty much the opponent that I thought was going to take place last November, was it? When that fight fell through with Otto Wallin. Had another win since, been looking for a big fight, and he's landed it. The other names that were considered were Chris Arreola, Otto Wallin again, and who else? Zile Zhang, Dempsey McKean, and it was decided that we go with the unbeaten American.
Zhang would have been interesting, wouldn't it?
Good fight. I mean, I know he's coming off a loss, but it was a very close fight with Hrgovic. But you know, all those guys, Dempsey McKean, Zhang, they're all going to be in big fights moving forward. They're ready to roll the dice, but it was Jermaine Franklin, the American, who got the call.
Very interesting, we'll call it a co-main event in Fabio Wardley and Nathan Gorman. Yeah, finally we're going to get to see that fight which lands on that card.
Yeah, November 26 is a fantastic card. I mean, when you look at those top three fights, Whyte Franklin is a really, really good heavyweight fight. I love Wardley against Gorman because the British heavyweight title is a very, very prestigious title that, you know, I think all guys and hopefully one day females as well. Bosh! You all right, mate? Yeah, good, you? And should look to win. And the British heavyweight title is very, very prestigious. And Wardley against Gorman is a pure 50-50 fight. It's a big step up for Fabio Wardley, and it's one that I believe he's ready for. Gorman is a very good fighter. You know, almost froze a little bit in the Dubois fight, but has come back, looked very, very good. Fast hands, both of them very explosive. It's a tremendous fight. And also, shout out to Craig Richards, who's fighting Richard Bolotniks, you know, which is going to be an absolute war. And, you know, coming off the back of the Boazzi fight, which is another fight of the year contender, November 26th, fantastic card, and Wardley Gorman is a belter.
Is it Ricardo Bolotniks?
Yes. What did I say?
Richard. I'm just saying.
Actually is Richard Bolotniks.
Okay, Richard, fine, that's fine. Sandy Ryan in action as well.
Yeah, really good fight against Rodriguez, the WBC silver champion. One more win for Sandy Ryan, and she's ready to fight for a world title. She would have been coming off a Farias victory. She'd come off a Rodriguez victory, and she'd be ready to fight for the world title. That's a very tough fight.
I heard a rumour that there's a possibility of Babbage and Rivas landing on that card. No?
Possibly. I mean, we're waiting for the WBC to officially order that fight at the convention. We've been told that's going to be ordered. We've been told that by Yvonne Michel that they're ready for that fight. I think they're looking at a fight in Poland as well, but Babbage may well be out on that card as well.
Okay, that's a very busy weekend in London, isn't it?
November 26th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Got Parker and Ryder at the O2, and on the Sunday there's a show which obviously doesn't affect the Saturday night, but yeah, it's going to be a kind of a London boxing weekend.
Yeah, I mean, no one really likes a clash, but unfortunately now there's so much boxing going on, you're going to get plenty of them, and that's a big weekend for London boxing. Of course, when you look at the shows, there is one standout show, top to bottom, and that's ours.
But John Ryder is in action against Zach Parker. I'm assuming that you're still involved with John Parker in order to make that fight happen. Can you talk to me about that?
Very good fight, and I'm pleased John's got an opportunity. I mean, we were looking at the Belanga fight. Top Rank didn't make an offer for that fight, and you know, ultimately we accepted the Ryder fight. I think one of the good things to come out of the AJ Fury fight not happening is the correspondence and the interaction with Queensberry. You know, we seem to have a good relationship with George Warren. Him and Frank Smith particularly negotiated that fight. We're happy to do business with them, happy to make a fight between a Matchroom and a Queensberry fighter without a purse bid. I don't remember the last time a fight like this was made like that. So that's good news for boxing, and it's a great fight for John Ryder. Zach Parker's a very good fighter, and so it's a good fight.
What do you make of Tyson Fury and Chisora, first of all, as a fight, and what did you make of the fact that your name's been chucked about in that press conference? I think Derek Chisora, I know he tried to ring you. What did you do? Swerve the call when he tried to ring in the presser?
So I woke up at about 7 o'clock Mexico time to about 4 missed calls from Derek Chisora. one WhatsApp audio, one FaceTime video, and a few other calls as well. And I was like, and I actually said when I saw the phone, I went, I bet he's tried to call me during an interview with you. And then obviously, once I woke up, I saw that he tried to call me during the presser. What do I think of that fight? That Del Boy's my guy. He's a mate of mine. I respect him greatly, and I think if you hadn't seen the first 2 fights, then you would have been okay with the pick of Derek Chisora. Tyson Fury has always wanted...
A long time ago, though.
Yeah, but Tyson Fury has always wanted to have what he would believe is an easy fight in December. He was going to fight Manuel Charr. Obviously, he saw the reaction, and they went for Derek Chisora. With Del Boy, he's always going to give it everything. He's just coming off a victory against Pulev. And again, I think it's because of the previous 2 fights that people complain about the fight. But if you're looking at just a pick for a voluntary defence, a Brit against a Brit, I think Del Boy deserves a shot. And I'm pleased for him that he gets that chance, and I know he'll give it everything.
I'm assuming you couldn't have offered him a better option to what he's getting at the moment.
No, we had a first, last in the agreement with the fight anyway, and obviously, he's making a couple of £1 million, and good luck to him. And he deserves that opportunity and that money, and he'll give it everything. He's a great guy. He's a tough man, and we'll be behind him 100% in the fight.
But people kind of moaning and kind of about him fighting Chisora, etc. In your opinion, we saw kind of Frank Warren list off 10 different names of why potential fights couldn't happen. But when you do look down the list, what would have been, in your opinion, if take Chisora out of this, what would have been a better option for Tyson Fury? Say, all right, I'm going to remove Joe Joyce out of it for a second because he didn't fight too long ago. But name me who he could have fought in that time.
If you listen to Umar is on a propaganda mission with Frank Warren, basically going through the names, giving him parts. He goes, Frank, we go through this. I mean, Joe Joyce, obviously, he's not available. Why is he not available? He would have taken the fight.
For December the 3rd?
He would have taken, trust me, with the same notice that Derek Chisora had. Don't forget that whilst we were negotiating for AJ, they were negotiating with Derek Chisora. When we got the deadline for Anthony Joshua, we were told he must make a decision today. It took nearly 4 weeks after that for them to sign an opponent. So why weren't we given another 4 weeks? But anyway, that's an old story. But during that period, Joe Joyce would have been ready to fight Tyson Fury, no problem. But I know, listen, Frank went down the list. I would have done exactly the same thing as Frank, right? And I would have gone, look, let's go down this list. And then there's Derek. So that's why we've chosen him. What they did is they chose Derek Chisora because they think it'd be a straightforward fight. He's a Londoner. Saturday champ. Good to see you. Thank you. He's like Benjamin Button, Kiko Martinez. He looks younger than he did last fight. In fact, he looked younger than he did 10 years ago. Do you want other names? Filip Hrgović. What about him?
That would have been a good fight.
Yeah. Again, like Andy Ruiz, obviously just fought, but I like the way they say, Andy Ruiz is fighting Deontay Wilder. Well, not really. It hasn't even been ordered yet, but anyway. But look, I think if he hadn't had the 2 victories over him, I think that, when you do look at that list, I think that, Derek Chisora is a solid name. It's just that people see it as one-sided, but it could have been Manuel Charr, and it was very close to being Manuel Charr, and it's a much better fight than Manuel Charr.
Okay, let's talk about Deontay Wilder. Obviously returned to action not too long ago with an emphatic knockout of Robert Helenius. So you can answer both these in the same breath if you like. Dan Raphael reported that it done around 75,000 pay-per-view buys. Again, that's according to Dan Raphael. So yeah, you can kind of picture all that in one.
Look, pay-per-view buyers, obviously Dan Raphael's got it drastically wrong before, especially on the Canelo Triple G numbers. I've seen it reported on multiple outlets. I don't know. If that is the case, it's an absolute disaster. But at the same time, it's not a massive fight. I just think it's a state of the pay-per-view industry at the moment that people around the world are looking at their expenditure a little bit more, especially when you've got the price point of the American pay-per-views, and maybe that's having an effect on the numbers moving forward. That being said, I think Deontay Wilder is a amazing addition to the heavyweight division, or not even an addition, but amazing part of it. I think he's an outstandingly entertaining fighter. He punches very, very hard. If you look at the Helenius, there's a lot of people saying that was a dive. right? Which, of course, it wasn't. But if you look at the way the punch was landed, it was almost with an open fist, and it travelled about 6 inches. But he's so fast and wiry, he's unbelievably dangerous, and he's so exciting to watch. So, for me, the AJ Wilder fight could be the biggest fight in the division. And I think it will happen next year. It's great to see those guys talking about it like they want to, they want to make it. They never came back to me.
Can I stop you there? It's not though, is it?
What?
You can't say AJ and Wilder's the biggest fight in the division.
Maybe.
What, bigger than AJ and Fury?
Maybe. Globally. Mate, it's such an exciting fight. Probably not, but can you imagine AJ against Deontay Wilder?
Unbelievable fight. Unbelievable, yes, but it's not bigger than AJ Fury, Ed. Come on. You've been pumping AJ Fury for the last 10 years,
fight.
mate.
Big fight. I just feel like it is a big fight.
But have you had talks with Shelley Finkel?
No, I sent Shelley Finkel an email about 6 weeks ago and said, I've got some huge offers that I need to make you and Deontay Wilder for a number of big fights in the division, namely Dillian Whyte and AJ, and they never came back to me. But they are saying now that they might come back to me. I just, it'd be nice to start those conversations.
How is your relationship with Shelley Finkel and Team Wilder? Because obviously in previous situations, you've not been their cup of tea, shall we like?
Well, I think I'm definitely still not their cup of tea. But again, at what point do you just say, hold on a minute, this guy is doing huge shows all over the world. He says he has a huge offer for us. Maybe we should find out what it is.
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
I mean, look, I don't particularly like you, but if you phoned me up and went, Ed, I've got something I really need to tell you. I've got an opportunity for you that could change your life forever, and it is massive. I would listen to you, reluctantly. I would want to know what it is.
All I heard was you said you didn't particularly like me.
Well, I mean, you're
It's a
okay.
bit harsh, isn't it?
Well, you're okay, but you've moved. And you haven't even told me.
What?
You've moved. You're not even a Basildon boy anymore. Or
Never Basildon anyway.
And now you're not even telling
You've
me.
been in Australia, you've been in Mexico. Mate, come on. We'll have a catch up later anyway. Edward, can we talk about this situation with Conor Benn? Because you've been on TalkSport today saying that a statement will come from Conor Benn this week. So, as the situation currently stands regarding Conor Benn, what is that situation?
The situation is he's going through a legal process at the moment with hearing to determine his future, really, and what's going to happen. The one thing that we want more than anything is for this case to be heard. And Conor Benn will be giving you a lot of that information via print media and also in video stuff as well over the next couple of days. From my point of view, there's a lot of people, when people presume that I just went to Australia and Mexico to get away, I actually had shows over there as well. I have no problem talking about the process that unfolded. What I can't talk about is something that will prejudice his legal position, because that's over to him. He's got the biggest fight of his life unfolding now, and there's a line that people use which is innocent until proven guilty, and in this case sometimes it's guilty until proved innocent, and that's really what he's got to do, is convince the public of his position and his innocence. But also we need the case to be heard, because I feel like until the case is heard in some way, people won't be happy with the outcome. Do you understand what I mean? Because if he's just allowed, he could fight now in most countries around the world now, but he needs to have that process, and he needs someone to determine whether he's innocent, guilty, whether he's unlucky, whether he should be banned, whether he should not be banned, because he needs to at some point move forward with his life and his career and find out where he stands.
Eddie, looking back on this now, do any part of you regret, as soon as you had found out about, or the parties had found out about the foul test, regarding on whether what happened after that you should have just said this fight ain't happening and pulled the fight there and then? Well, is there part of you that regrets not doing that?
People won't like it when I use the word contractually, but contractually at that point, it's not on me. We can't terminate the agreement. Of course, the opposing fighter can terminate the agreement, and the British Boxing Board of Control cannot sanction the event. Ultimately, in that situation, you have to imagine, and again, you get that information, right? It's reported to Matchroom, to Conor Benn's team, to Wasserman, to Chris Eubank Jr. and the British Boxing Board of Control. That information comes in. The first thing is complete shell shock, right? Everybody gets on the phone, everybody requests further information. Calla and Eubank want to know absolutely everything in depth about this test, what's happened, the findings in the laboratory, everything. They get all that, they get their own medical advice. Chris Eubank Jr. comes back and says, and again, this will come out in Conor Benn stuff, and this is important to people's perception of whether Conor Benn is innocent or not in terms of the findings from the test. We've looked into this test. We do not believe this to be performance enhancing in any way. We're prepared to proceed with the fight. Okay, we then go to the British Boxing Board of Control. We've got a situation here, as it's been reported to you. This isn't a case of anything dusted under or brushed under the carpet, because all parties knew. What do you want to do? You know, we know in the past you don't acknowledge VADA. Are you going to acknowledge VADA? He's passed all his UCAD tests. He had a UCAD test pending, which we pushed to get the results of, which he passed around at exactly the same time. So everything in terms of the test from the scientists points to contamination, right? But people you can't just accept that on the chin. It's in your system. So we rely on the board for a decision. Now that decision took nearly 2 weeks. And for 4 or 5 days of that at the end was complete silence. What I probably regret, and this was probably the fact that we received this news an hour before I turned up to do all the interviews at the workout, was we wanted to consider our position at that point, because we had 2 fighters that wanted to fight, and we had to look at what are we going to do right now. Are we going to have an injunction, which we would win? You know, people talked about using another commission. That was never something that I would consider doing. And during those next 12, 18 hours, we digested that information and decided, of course, we can't proceed with the bout. If I regret anything, it's certainly not the process that unfolded to allow the board, our governing body, to make its ruling, because I have to do that. But probably when we got the decision, probably shouldn't have been as bullish as to say, you know, my interviews with you was, look, they don't acknowledge VADA and we have to consider our position here. But you have to understand, it's quite a difficult situation to be in at that point, where you get the information 45 minutes before. You've got 60 of you lot around me with cameras. You've got Team Eubank saying, we're ready to fight. We're ready to fight. And yeah, ultimately the right decision was made. I have no problem with the board's decision. What I have a problem with is that it took 2 weeks. Because if the board would have made their decision instantly or within 48 hours,
Why do you think there was a 2 week? Like, is it them processing information?
Yes, because of the science behind the testing, which you will find out. The fact that Chris Eubank and the medical team of Wasserman said, we're happy to continue with the fight. The fact that the British Boxing Board of Control do not acknowledge VADA. The fact that Conor Benn had passed all his VADA tests, UCAD tests leading up to the fight. I'm not saying the board had an easy decision. I just wish they would have either had a hearing or made a quicker decision. Because ultimately, how it looks is, oh, well, it just dragged out and dragged out and dragged out. But until we get a decision from our governing body, we can't make a decision on what we're going to do. Like I said, if I look back, perhaps at that point, we don't be so bullish and say, well, hang on a minute, but you know, because it had taken so long, we were all so invested in the fight, not even financially, just that Eubank had digested it, everybody had had conversations. It was a difficult situation.
Do you think it is about time, though, the board started recognising, whether it's VADA or whoever, the extra layer, as you call it, that testing, they should recognise that as much as they do with UCAD?
The funniest thing about it is, it's not even funny, is we've spent millions on VADA testing, right? Most times, and in this fact, the fighters request it. Conor Benn asked us to implement additional VADA testing in this fight. Chris Eubank Jr. wanted VADA testing in this fight. They don't pay for it, I pay for it. Everybody's response of what is the point of implementing that extra layer if you don't acknowledge the results is 100%.
It's a fair point, yeah?
It's a fair point. But what you also do is you get to know the results and you get to know what's happened. So in this instance, not only was it not deemed to be by the experts as performance enhancing, not only did everybody on both sides believe Conor Benn in this situation, but there's no ruling body that decides other than putting it in the hands of the British Boxing Board of Control. So in this instance, we turn around and we look at the Billy Joe Saunders situation where he tested positive for VADA but was allowed to continue because the board don't acknowledge that, and they said that in writing. That was a decision the board had to make. It was just a shame that it took so long. The board were also in a difficult position. I'm not saying they weren't, But because it dragged on for so long, and of course, a lot of that dragging meant that we ended up incurring huge number of costs during that period. Of course, we've got the venue, we've got the hotels, we've got the launch party, we've got the workout, you're talking about £1 million. So, of course, we're in a position where all of a sudden this has been sprung on us on a Wednesday, but ultimately we have to rely on that board's decision. I don't think it was handled perfectly by anyone. In all honesty, it was a very difficult situation. But in answer to your question, absolutely. And people have got to understand as well that all of these tests are reported to the Commission. It's not like someone's trying to not report any tests. The British Boxing Board of Control have the results of all tests. VADA, UKAD, everything. Okay? But yes, I agree with you. I think that if you're implementing that extra layer, that the Commission involved in the fight that you are working with will acknowledge those results. I go back to, I believe the right decision was made. It ended up looking much worse for us that the board took so long to make that decision. But going back to VADA, yes, 100% agree. And, I don't criticise VADA, but if you look at this, if we hadn't have implemented the extra layer of testing into this fight, the fight would have taken place because he passed all his UKAD tests, right? That's I guess, a good thing that we've implemented the test and they've found that result.
Can I ask you a question? When have you ever done a fight of this magnitude without VADA testing? Because
Never.
So
we are.
But you were never going to do this without VADA testing, were you?
But I'm not. No. Like, yeah. I mean,
you don't have to. But I'm saying to you, a fight of this size.
What I'm saying to you is a fight of this size. We, as a business, will always insist on VADA testing. Also, there are certain fighters that will always insist on VADA testing. In this instance, one of the first things when we signed a contract was, and obviously because of the size difference as well, Conor Benn said, I want to make sure he's VADA tested. No problem. And Eubank said, I want to make sure he's VADA tested. Dillian Whyte will never take a fight without VADA testing. Anthony Joshua will never take a fight without VADA testing. Like these are fighters that insist on it every time. We suffer that cost. We pay that cost every time. What we can't do is VADA test every single fight. You're talking about 40, 50,000 for one fight, right? So in this instance, the additional VADA testing was implemented and ultimately it found a result that UKAD wouldn't have found. And Conor Benn has to explain and go before the hearing to explain that position.
If you want VADA testing and the fighters don't want VADA testing, what happens?
I've never been in that situation.
If you was, what happens if for some reason they didn't?
If I said to a fighter, right, we want to implement VADA testing and we're paying for it, and they went, nah, I don't want that. I mean, that for me,
alarm bell.
Flag times. Yeah. So going into this fight, and again, you'll find the results and the science. Conor Benn had so many different testing, schedules around this fight, and this is why none of it makes sense. And again, people will listen to this and go, like, you're going to hear from Conor Benn, but give the kid a chance because none of this makes sense at all. And like I said, especially when you know that I had conversation with him where he was asking for additional testing. So, but going back to your original point, yes, 100%. Because another problem is UKAD aren't testing British fighters enough at the lower level. So there'll be fighters that are fighting for British titles, for area titles that aren't being UKAD tested. Okay, so if I was the board, I would be welcoming the fact that a promoter is paying for the additional testing. But it must be recognised by UKAD. I think in this testing world, no one really likes each other. UKAD, USADA, WADA, VADA, So UKAD are very much like, no. We do the testing and we use our results to acknowledge our regulatory process. Well, he passed all his tests. And by the way, when the fight got cancelled, you sent UKAD out on the same day to try and catch Conor Benn out and said, we're going to get the results today, of which you haven't told us about because they were negative as well. So there's plenty to come out on this, and Conor Benn's got a tough fight on his hands.
I know you're saying a lot is going to come out, etc., but from your perspective, are you happy or satisfied with the reason why there were whatever amounts or traces of clomiphene in Conor Benn's system, the reasons why. You mentioned the word contamination there. I know you're not going to tell us everything at the moment, but are you satisfied with that yourself?
In my heart, I'm satisfied that Conor Benn was not taking performance-enhancing drugs. Now, the fact that he has to deal with, and the fact that cannot be denied, is that it was in his system, regardless of the fact that it was the tiniest levels, and he'd passed tests a couple of weeks before, and he'd passed tests a week after, and all the scientists are saying there is no way he can be on effectively a cheating cycle of clomiphene, which stays in your system for months and months and months. So everything leads towards a contamination, if you like. But you can't just go, okay then mate, no problem, sweet, you crack on. There has to, as an athlete, you are responsible for what is in your system. Whether it's come from another supplement, whether you've been unlucky. Again, you go and Google clomiphene in chicken and eggs, and it exists, and no one will believe you. But unfortunately, you have to be responsible for what is found in those samples. And that is the tough reality of the situation he's in. So, when you talk about contamination, okay, but where, why, all these other reasons. And for that reason, that's why he has to go through the process, because whether he's banned or not, he has to, and if he is banned, then he has to say, and if he's innocent, he has to say, it was a kick in the nuts, I'm unbelievably unlucky, but I'm going to serve this ban and I'm going to come back better than ever. But he has to go through that process, because, not necessarily you, but the media and the public will not stand for him not going through a hearing. And he needs that hearing. That's why I'm saying with the ball, we wanted a hearing. Don't forget, again, there's been other situations with other fighters where we've had emergency hearings before the fight that have been cleared to go on and fight. But he wasn't given that due process. And now he's going to have to get it. But it's going to be a hard fight, because people have already made up their mind without knowing anything. So let the situation unfold. I believe he's innocent through many different reasons, from the results, from knowing the young man, from having him in my office with Tony Sims and his dad and people breaking down. I mean, this was a hard time for everyone. It's been a very hard time for Conor Benn, and he's the one that won't be getting any sympathy at all. But we'll see. We'll see what unfolds, and I hope that if people see the facts and believe him, that you give him the respect he deserves.
What is the situation regarding the B sample? Can you talk to us about that? Has been requested?
Yeah, all coming out. It has been requested, and it all coming out in Conor Benn's statement. I will say one thing about the B sample, and I've said this before. But when you talk about contamination in a lab, that's where B samples are very effective. When you talk about contamination via other means...
It's going to be the same sample, obviously. If it's not happening in the lab, it's going to happen the same sample.
99% of times, the B sample will be the same as the A sample. And that's not a situation in the case that he's relying on. But people get obsessed with a B sample. I see it now. People just randomly replying to my tweets all the time. Where's the B? Again, you'll see that in the information, but I don't expect that B sample to be any different. I hope it is, but generally it isn't.
Just finally, what have you made of Chris Eubank Senior's comments? He was on TalkSport. He's been on there regularly over the last couple of weeks, stating that Conor Benn's situation that blame should be placed on the team. As opposed to just the fighter. I'm sure you've seen them comments. What do you make of them?
Firstly, I think it's very low of TalkSport to be allowing Chris Eubank in the current position to be being interviewed like that, in my opinion. Chris Eubank Senior was an outstanding fighter, was a great champion. He's a father, he's been through a lot, and a lot of his comments, his main comments seem to be around the fact that Chris Eubank Jr. was made to make £157 for this fight. Ultimately, Chris Eubank Jr. is his own man. He has his own team. He has his own promotional company. And they made the decision that 157 was a fair weight for the fight. Now, I don't know if he would have made 157. We don't know that. But what I do know is that Conor Benn was moving from 147 to 157. And a lot of his comments seem to be about, people making weight in that respect for the fight, and that he was dangerous. Regarding his situation that people have put this in him from his training team, you are suggesting that training team that was with him, through his whole career, which is Tony Sims, and his whole camp leading up to that fight, which was 14 weeks, which is his father. And by the way, I truly believe that if Conor Benn was genuinely cheating, that Tony Sims and Nigel Benn would know about this. And if you know Tony Sims,
I agree with that.
right, they'd know.
Tony Sims definitely, and Nigel, yes, I do believe if he was, then there's no way that they wouldn't know about
Exactly. They live with him, right? It's physically impossible. And there is absolutely no way in the world that Tony Sims would ever be involved with this. And Nigel Benn as well. I've had everybody in my office, and I know people can tell you otherwise. When you look in the whites of someone's eyes and you see, this is cut very, very deep, but in this situation with everybody. But again, there's no point hearing from me because people make their own minds up. But I've been through the process. I've spoke to these people dozens of times. We've had the tears. Conor Benn's had the opportunity to come out with, if he wanted to, excuses that would clear his name. He doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to lie. Right? So that's why we're in this situation of almost like the unknown of this. Like he could have come out and said, loads of stuff on fertility and all this. He does not want to lie. And I think, what Chris Eubanks Senior is basically saying is that Tony Sims and Nigel Benn would know. And they've done it, which is ridiculous. But anyway, that's what it is.
Just a quick couple of things. Canelo. I saw you made some comments regarding, obviously we've got a huge fight in Abu Dhabi next week. Absolutely. But yeah, can you just talk to me about the comments that you've made recently on Canelo's situation?
About Bivol?
Yes.
Yeah, just that, obviously, Canelo and Eddie Reynoso are going to be there looking at the fight with huge interest. I mean, I think if, obviously, they'll probably want... I'm missing Katie Taylor. They're probably going to want to make sure that... they'd like Zerdo to win because he's Mexican, but also at the same time they want Bivol to win because they want that rematch. So that's a massive fight, Bivol against Zerdo, and of course Chantel Cameron against Jessica McCaskill, and Zelfa Barrett against Rakimov for the world title. Galal Yafai, Cal Yafai, Campbell Hatton, Aki Fia is a massive card in Abu Dhabi, and yeah, I think a lot will be clear in terms of Canelo's ambition for his next fight after the fight next Saturday.
Just a final one, what did you make of this situation regarding Adrian Broner signing for BLK, is it?
Yeah, I mean, look, Broner's Broner, isn't he? He's going to go wherever the money is. Don't know what he's got left in his career. I mean, he's got 3 fights there. I don't know if you've ever seen him back in the ring, but good luck to AB. It used to be about billions, now it's just about millions, but never too bad.
Eddie Hearn, thank you very much.
I'm going to share something with you that might put me in a very negative light, yeah.
Relationships are not my forte.
See if someone grabbed up my wife or something, completely different ballgame.
I'll walk away from it, and this has been like a therapy session.